Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Poker News podcast. I'm your girl, Sarah Herring, joined by Jeff Platt and Chad Holloway. Jeff and I had kind of a late night for me anymore last night, raising money for the holiday party for the One Step Closer Foundation. Partnered up with our peeps at Run Good. Jeff, you want to talk about the experience?
I just want to say thanks to Run Good. This is the aftermath of the event last night. This was a bottle of wine for those just listening to our podcast. I'd like to thank Chad for the generous write-up on Poker News. I'd like to thank Sarah for joining us. Like Sarah said, we raised some money for One Step Closer Foundation for this awesome toy drive that they do for their holiday hospital party. So it was just great. I enjoyed it. Thanks to those of you listening who joined us as well.
Did you join, Chad?
I did not join, unfortunately. We had our home game, Tuesday night home game, where I was kind of hoping to maybe do both, but once I got to the home game, and I just realized it was going to be too much to handle. And so I hope it was a big success. It seemed like it would be a lot of fun, and I think it's great that Tana and everybody who was involved put that together, and Jeff, for you for hosting it. It's great, to give back at this time of year, I think is just something real cool to do.
Chad, since you didn't see, we'll just say Sarah won the trivia contest.
Yes,
she won.
Nailed it. Not even there, except for I lost all of the riddle-y questions, all of the trick questions. I failed big time. Which, speaking of, you guys, as we talk about giving away, Poker News is using this December to give back to our audience. And really, this is something almost unprecedented for us. We've never been able to give away as much as we are doing this year. We're giving away 3 PlayStation Classics, 2 Xbox Series X. We have Apple iPhone 12 mini, Amazon gift cards, Apple Watch. It's crazy. December is crazy. And basically almost every day we're giving something away, and you can get a calendar into your inbox if you just go to any of the articles on Poker News, which talk about the, we'll also put a link, but any of the articles on Poker News which talk about the giveaways, you could just go in the search engine and type in December giveaways and follow us on Twitter, follow all our social platforms. There's a whole bunch of information going out there. And I also made a bunch of videos and stuff, which you can find out about the giveaways. Okay, we have some important stuff to get into, but just before that, I wanted to double check. Chad, did you get a comeback from last week's home game? Which I understand did not go as very well for you.
A comeback?
Yeah, like did you get back the money that you lost last week?
I got back a little bit, like half of what I had lost the week before. Okay. Right? That seems to be how it goes sometimes. You have a big win, then you lose some back, and then you recoup a little. It's why I just don't understand why I can't put together back-to-back wins. It seems so daunting, but it always seems to be the case with me in cash games, unfortunately.
And I think, Sarah, more importantly, there are 2 tweets that really drew my eyes this morning. One from Chad Holloway talking with Ryan Feldman about the greatness of pan-style Pizza Hut, which Chad is the pan-style pizza from Pizza Hut is awesome. Yes, it's just awesome.
No, incorrect. So you got to understand, before poker, once upon a time, I worked at Pizza Hut for like 5 years between delivering, cooking. I was even a manager for a little while. It was like my high school job. It just, and I ate a lot of pizza, and they really haven't changed much of their recipes since then. And so I just don't have a taste much for Pizza Hut pizza. I love all kinds of others, Domino's, Papa John's, you name it. And it's not that Pizza Hut is bad per se. It's just I've eaten too much of it in my life. So anytime I get a hankering for Pizza Hut, I'm like, all right, let's order it. And then I usually order it, and I'm like, that was a bad idea. And I usually get like thin crust. That's my go-to. I'm not a big fan of pan style usually. But as I said in my tweet, I just got a hankering for it. Well, for whatever reason, out of the blue, I had an urge for pan-style pizza from Pizza Hut.
You're pregnant. Chad's pregnant.
And I ordered it, and it was okay. I mean, it was decent. It filled that need, but it certainly messed up the plumbing a little bit. And yeah, I'd probably be good on the Pizza Hut pan pizza for another few years at least.
So I'm a big fan. I had a lot of Las Vegas hangover Pizza Hut pan styles. And Heath likes the thin crust, so I had to always get my own. Like, I'm not trying to do that thin crust. When you're hungover, you need the pan.
Yeah, you need
the oil, pan, the grease.
The thickness. And then tweet number 2, and this is breaking this morning and social media is kind of going nuts about it. We do have more information on the new season of High Stakes Poker that starts December 16th on Poker Go. The broadcasters, the hosts of the show, of the iconic show, will be AJ Benza and Gabe Kaplan. So going old school and bringing the guys back into the booth for High Stakes Poker, which is pretty wild, I would say.
I noticed they didn't ask me or you, Jeff. What happened?
You know, I think negotiations broke down between our respective teams.
Your people.
Yeah, and so I think, Sarah, you were close.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
I think
Chad and I are far.
The only thing to say about this exciting news is welcome back, Cotter.
Yes,
welcome
back,
well
Mr. played.
Welcome back, Mr. Gabe Kaplan.
Be sure to tweet that before anybody steals that, Chad.
Zingers. Well, of course, we're all excited about High Stakes Poker. And in this world, in the last few weeks, there has been plenty of High Stakes Poker going on. And we will have updates for you guys on the Galfond Challenge, on Daniel and Doug, of course, and some of the other interesting tidbits to light the Twitter and social space on fire over the last week. But before we get into that, let's just take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors. Winter is coming to Natural 8, Asia's biggest online poker room. This Christmas and New Year, the hunt for WSOP glory continues with the WSOP Winter Online Circuit. Boasting a massive $100 million guarantee, there will be 18 official WSOP rings to be won. Make sure you choose Natural 8 as your preferred online poker platform, and you could win bonus WSOPC live event sponsorships. There are 3 tiers to the sponsorships you can win, ranging from $5,000 all the way up to $50,000. You could also become an ambassador for Natural 8. To find out more, visit the website at www.natural8.com and download the app now to start playing. Also, don't forget about the first deposit bonus. Natural 8 is offering a massive bonus to any player looking to make a deposit for the very first time on their website. Deposits are matched by 200%, so that's plenty of bang for your buck. Deposit $30 to get a bonus of $60. Deposit $100 to get a bonus of $200. You get the drift. If instant rewards are more your thing, you can also opt to receive $100 in cash and free tickets right away. All you have to do is deposit a minimum of $20. It's really that simple. Visit the Natural 8 website at www.natural8.com for more information and download the app now to kickstart your online poker journey. So this week, kind of out of the blue, I would say, generally speaking, I think there's a little buzz, a little hype, like people, I always go back to the like Isolder reveal, you know, generally I think when poker companies are about to reveal an ambassador, somehow some leak or something gets out. But in this case, we discovered this week that Dan Bilzerian is the new GGPoker ambassador. They did a gigantic 100K free roll promotion. And we will in fact talk to the winner of that promotion either next week or the week after, depending on kind of how we can arrange our schedules. But this really ignited a shitstorm on Twitter. I think I will probably have a very unpopular opinion, but that's pretty much par for the course on the show. Which one of you wants to talk a little bit about what went down?
Go ahead, Chad.
All right. So Dan Bilzerian signs with GGPoker at the beginning of the month. And that in itself was kind of controversial, if you will. A lot of people had a lot of different opinions on it because Dan Bilzerian is polarizing. He's kind of like a Phil Hellmuth in that regard. A lot of people love him. A lot of people hate him. He's kind of got a brand built around him. And whether or not you're a fan of that brand or not kind of will dictate where you fall on the spectrum. And it didn't take long for him to, you know, fall headfirst into some controversy because as people were discussing the merits of this signing on social media, one Vanessa Cade, said that she didn't like it. She expressed her displeasure. She was echoing the sentiments of many. And Dan Bilzerian replied to one of her tweets by saying, I wish I had it pulled up exactly, but essentially, be quiet, ho, nobody knows who you are, using the word ho and misspelling it as in the garden tool. Anyways, that obviously was throwing gasoline on the fire if you will, and you've really seen that on social media, some people calling for, GGPoker to issue a statement or to drop him as an ambassador right away, for the WSOP, who has a good relationship with GGPoker, to comment or distance themselves. And then you have Daniel Negreanu, who is a GGPoker ambassador, welcoming Bilzerian to the team, expressing the merits of the signing and how he could possibly bring in a whole new audience of players. Some people agree, some people disagree. It's definitely a very controversial signing, and that's kind of the stage is set. And let's turn it to Sarah then. You said, what's your unpopular opinion about all this?
Oh yes, Sarah Herring coming in with the unpopular opinion per the usual. So everybody really jumped on Bilzerian and jumped on GGPoker, how disgusting, and he's a misogynist. And I definitely felt, I personally love Vanessa. We have a great relationship, and I think she's great. But I also think if you're going to go out there and throw shade at somebody's, this is a money deal for him, right? This is like a business deal. And if you're going to come out and throw shade and say, I think you shouldn't be making money in this spot, then I think you open yourself up for somebody to snap back at you. And I think it made sense to me if somebody came at me like that for something about, my own money or my own business, I would probably say something like, shut up, dick, or whatever. I don't know. It's like, it wasn't that clever of a comeback. It was pretty par for the course. I think it wasn't. And probably there was a little part of it that maybe stung, because he does have a lot of followers and maybe she doesn't. And there is some sort of, I think, metric in our culture at this point where you have some sort of validation based on, your followership or something. So maybe it hurt a little more than it should have. But I feel like everyone could expect maybe this from Bilzerian. And I also understood from Gigi's perspective that all the people that are saying you shouldn't have him as an ambassador are definitely not the people that are looking at ambassadors to define how they choose which site they're playing on, right? So he might bring in people who don't already play poker, and people who do already play poker don't care who the ambassadors are. Boom.
I might have mentioned this on a past episode of the show. I know firsthand that he has at least a little influence on bringing some people into the game, because one of the people who came to our home game a few months ago was a young 18-year-old kid. It was his first time there. We didn't really know, who he was. He was new to the game, and got invited to this home game. And so I kind of asked him, how did you learn poker? How'd you get into poker? And he was just learning. He wasn't very good at the time, but he had, that passion that many of us had when we first discovered the game. And he said, much to my surprise, that it was Dan Bilzerian on Instagram. That's how he was introduced to poker. And, he's a fan, I guess, of Dan Bilzerian and that lifestyle. I know a lot of young people are. I am not so, enthralled by it, being, in my late 30s as compared to maybe a young impressionable kid in their late teens or early 20s might be. But I can certainly see that draw, if you will. I might not appreciate it as much as some, but I certainly understand it. And something about Bilzerian to me is I had one interaction with him, and it was in Las Vegas, and it was not in a poker setting. It was a bunch of poker people and other people in a private residence playing Ultimate Werewolf, right? And it was a fun game. There was probably, 20, 25 people there, and he was there. And our interaction was very brief. He left shortly after my arrival, but my quick impression of him there was kind of surprisingly reserved. He wasn't the life of the party. He was, didn't have all these women around him. He was pretty quiet and kind of kept to himself. And it just reminded me of kind of like Helmuth. Like Helmuth to me is a really good guy off the felt. Like I know him, but he's got that brand, right? He's got that poker brat brand. And so sometimes he plays into that and lives up to that. And I think Bilzerian probably does the same. I don't think he's got women around him, lounging about in bikinis 24/7, maybe just when the cameras are around or what have you. Now, the big question remains, and this is what's bantered about on social media a lot, is does an online poker site want to be associated with that sort of brand? And obviously GGPoker says they do. They must see the benefits of it because they know what he's all about, and they brought him on as an ambassador.
to Chad's point, we speak a lot about exposure, and especially mainstream exposure for poker. You know, we're always trying to capitalize on ESPN showcasing of the World Series of Poker main event, et cetera, et cetera. And when you have a guy who has tens of millions of social media followers, that's going to bring in some exposure to the game. Some of it will be positive. You'll bring in a lot more people to poker. Some of it will be negative, as we saw showcased over the last week. I really like the move by GG. Am I personally a Dan Bilzerian fan? No, I mean, not really. To Chad's point, I've had one also really brief interaction with him, and he was also just very nice, very laid back, and a very reserved guy. You know, should he talk to women like that? Absolutely not. Whether it's spelled correctly or not, you know, not a word that he should be using, whether he's on Team GG or whether he's not on Team GG. I just think that he will bring in new people to the game. Now, what I'd like to see from him, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, if you've seen something different, but I haven't seen a tweet from him about GGPoker. I haven't seen an Instagram post from him about GGPoker. You know, it's one thing for GG to tweet, hey, we got Dan Bilzerian in the game. It's one thing for him to be on the site. It's a completely different thing for him to start marketing GG to his tens of millions of followers. And that's where GG will be able to capitalize. So I like the move overall. I would just like to see some more promotion from his social media accounts.
I've always felt very skeptical about the celebrity ambassadors. Sarah, sure. I'm sure you've seen it over the years too, where, you know, poker stars used to have a lot of them. We'd see Kevin Hart, you know, who's associated with Party Poker now, Usain Bolt, a lot of these European sports stars, Neymar. I just don't ever have never left feeling like, wow, that the juice was really worth the squeeze on that one, so to speak. It's just like, let's sign it. We get that big headline. We get that big name. Maybe we film a little commercial or put them in this charity celebrity game. And that's kind of the extent of it. I'd like to see a little bit more engagement from ambassadors. Like we were just talking about high stakes poker. Dan Bilzerian is a high stakes kind of guy. You know, find a way to get him out there, get him visible, but at the same time doing things on his platforms as well, Jeff, like you said, like promoting the game and what have you. And I just feel like across the board, not all, but a lot of these celebrity signings kind of just kind of fall flat, in my opinion.
It's not just your opinion, actually. And I don't know if this was like public or where I read or saw this, but I'm pretty sure like someone even within Poker Stars made it known that their celebrity signings, these major celebrity signings, fell flat for them as well. I think it financially it did not make a huge spike. Not a lot of people signed up. So it was kind of a big gamble that I think didn't pay out. And I see Bilzerian, you know, we've talked about this a lot, the move towards streamers as a more, I think, accessible and modern, you know, celebrity. And how that actually has, I think, been more beneficial. A lot of the poker sites have seen that. And so I see Bilzerian as sort of a nuanced version of a streamer, right? He just uses his social media in a slightly different way, but like it makes people feel like they're, you know, in his life, connected to him. It's a different version, I think, of celebrity when you're comparing to like, say, a Ronaldo or a Rafael Nadal or someone who feels, you know, so untouchable. And I think there's something very sexy about poker that we've kind of lost a lot in the last, you know, decade or something. It's like you think about fast cars and, you know, like martinis, you've got like James Bonds and beautiful women, money, all these things. And so I kind of think that even though we've kind of pulled away from that part and become this much more robot, you know, genius deal, which is part of poker too, also, I get that. But I feel like moving in the like sexy-ish part of it is something poker could use a little more of now, maybe. Is that weird? It's like kind of
it's not weird. I think poker could use that. I think that's a really good marketing tool. And I think the difference between the Bilzerian signing and the, you know, the Kevin Hart, Usain Bolt, et cetera, will be hopefully that Dan Bilzerian will actually play on GG. You know, Chad, you said it. Kevin Hart, I mean, he's in the States. It's no fault of his own, but he's not firing up Party Poker. He shoots a commercial for them once every 6 months or whatever it may be. The same was the case with Usain Bolt. Ronaldo would stop by at maybe 1, maybe 2 tournaments a year. Dan Bilzerian, we've seen before they brought him on the squad that he was playing the high stakes cash games, that he was playing the 10K World Series of Poker heads up, that he will use GG. So if he can advertise that he is actually playing on that software, now I think we're getting somewhere.
Well, we've got some very exciting news while we're on the topic of GG. The GGPoker WSOP main event portion of the final table is set, and we will come back and talk about that right after this quick break. GGPoker continues to revolutionize online poker with exclusive new games and features that set it apart from the opposition. Play at neck-breaking speed on the site's exciting spin and gold jackpot sit and go events and win big, or grind it out in the weekly $300,000 guaranteed GG Masters. You guys will not want to miss out on the GGPoker bonuses. You can get either $100 in cash and free tickets, or 100% match bonus up to a maximum of $600. You guys definitely do not want to miss out on their match deposit bonus. You can check that out on PokerNews.com. Be sure to search GGPoker bonus on PokerNews.com. So as we have talked about very many times up until this point, the World Series of Poker is happening in a very unique and unusual fashion, but we are going to have a World Series of Poker 2020 main event final table in 2 parts, and then a $1 million free roll heads up to crown our full-on champion. There was a lot of speculation about what we would do, you know, where people would come from, how COVID would affect things. And I think we are very, very much in that spot now. When we are looking at the final table, we have people from Brazil, people from Argentina, Lithuania, Liechtenstein, it's China. The hope, I think, was maybe there would be quite a few UK people, or quite a lot of, you know, these countries where it might be very easy to just head on over to the King's Casino. But I cringed a little when I saw the final table and wondered, have you guys heard any ideas about, is this going to happen?
I can speak a little bit about, PokerNews is slated to be there to live report this. And so we are going through some travel plans as well. So I've, corresponded with Yuri Epskamp, my counterpart, who handles the rest of the world live reporting. And it's definitely been a bit of a challenge, and it's something we're working through. And hopefully, everything goes according to plan. But we were talking about, wow, if we're having to jump through all these hoops, and you've got these 9 players from different countries, it's certainly going to be a challenge. And we're talking a short time frame. This final table is supposed to play out on Tuesday, less than a week. We're recording this on Wednesday the 9th. It's supposed to play out on the 15th. I wouldn't be shocked if in a few days they come out and say, we're going to exercise our option to have this final table play out online, because whatever hiccups, we couldn't get everybody in to, the Czech Republic, so this could play out at King's Casino. I have no inside knowledge or anything like that. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being the case. Now, if they actually do pull it off, kudos to them, because they're having people come from all around the world. Sarah, you listed all the countries there. And then it's interesting because you have somebody like Payan Sun, who goes by Fish 3098 from China, coming to a stack of 11 big blinds. That's a lot of travel. That's a lot of hoops to jump through to come to this final table and play for 11 bigs. Same for Stoyan Obreshkov out of Bulgaria. He has 11 big blinds. And this final table itself is fairly shallow. The big stack out of Brazil is Bruno Botian. He's got 52 big blinds. The next biggest stack is 31 bigs. You got 2 people in the 20s, and the rest are all in the teens. So kind of short. It could be action-packed if and when the final table does go off. But I'm very curious. It's waiting with bated breath to see if they can actually pull this off, because it seems like a logistical nightmare.
And were you all surprised with the turnout? I mean, I'll bash myself for a bit. I believe on this very show that I thought that the GG version of the 10K main event would get in the range. I think I said even like 1,700 to 2,000 players. And it had 674 players, creating a prize pool of about $6.5 million, about 1.5 million up top. And Sarah, to your point, I guess the travel concerns probably held a lot of people back. I'm not sure. I just expected a big field for this GG main.
It definitely made me think a little bit too about the numbers, of course, were shocking. And it made me think about this sort of magic in some ways of the World Series of Poker main event at the Rio with everyone there. And it made me think a little bit about how many people there really are who play that event who are not even close to professional poker players. And so maybe also a little bit of this like playing online and this type of environment is more inclusive for people who are consider themselves professionals or who do this all the time. And so it kind of like it loses its magic, maybe for a lot of more recreational players who just have 10 grand or it's their life goal. And also that it just loses its magic in some ways because it's not really the World Series of Poker main event anymore, right? And I think the clout, like I think it's very obvious, everyone can see the clout will be less. You're not really going to be right like a main event champion, or it doesn't feel like that. It's another Stoyan situation where he feels gypped or not taken care of in his ambassador role. But I don't know. Yeah, I was surprised, honestly. I was surprised.
It's definitely lower than expected. There's no denying that. They had 3 flights and totaling 674. It's still respectable. Right now the winner of that final table is slated to take home, I think it's over $1.5 million. So that's still respectable payout. I think the key now is we look ahead to the WSOP.com portion, which is going to start this weekend. I'll be in Vegas doing updates for this on Sunday. So it's a single starting flight on Sunday, then day 2 on Monday. So we'll soon have another final table to talk about. But I think the key for that one is 326. I say that number because if they can get 326, that brings the total field up to 1,000 runners, which I think sounds a whole lot better to have at least 1,000 or more than having 999 or less for the WSOP main event. I think it'll be close. WSOP.com, they have Nevada and New Jersey, and both states have a good contingent of online grinders. We've seen some great numbers throughout the WSOP.com bracelet events over the summer. They've had a circuit series going on. The numbers for that have been pretty strong. They've also been doing a lot of satellites. We're going to talk about one of those controversial ones involving Eric Baldwin here in just a moment. But I think 326 is achievable. If I had to set a line, I would set a line at about 400 is kind of my guess. Probably would take the under on it, but I think between 300 and 400, fingers crossed, come Sunday.
I hate to be pessimistic, and I understand your point about all the online grinders and the summer numbers. I don't see anybody besides you, Chad, traveling to Las Vegas for the WSOP.com 10K, a very, very small amount. I'm thinking it's more in the range of like 150 to 200, but I might have been dissuaded by the poor numbers from the GGPoker side of things.
Right. I think you might get a good boost from the California crowd, right? Because California is shut down right now. So they might just say, you know what? We got the main event going on. Let's travel over to Reno, or let's travel over to Vegas and fire this thing. So I think you could get a nice boost there. The East Coast can always travel to New Jersey, and we do see that. I know Greg Raymer was planning to drive from North Carolina up to New Jersey so he could participate in the main event. And so it's hard to say. I'm based in the Midwest, and I'm certainly not seeing the interest from Midwest players to travel out to play it, not at least not compared to the summer bracelet series. I guess we'll wait and see. We're going to know this weekend one way or the other, and it'll be curious. I know the satellites on WSOP.com have been seeming to start to fill up a little bit more, and so that's certainly a good indication.
It's also a really shitty time of year. Like, it's Christmas, y'all. It's almost Christmas. Like, EPT Prague was one thing, and then you like wrap out EPT Prague, and then like you chill the rest of December, right? That's like the poker schedule. That's what we do. But now it's like we're throwing in things like on New Year's Eve almost, and like right before Christmas. Like, maybe I'm just a weirdo, but I think a lot of people have plans and like set things up. They go home to see their families, or they want to, be with their kids, or whatever it is. I don't know. It's a far more inconvenient time, I think, than the summer, where it's a little bit easier for people to get away and travel.
We do have 700, not 700, that would be awesome. We do have 78 registered players right now for the main. So to Chad's point, with the satellites continuing to fill up, it might end up being a decent number.
Let's use this as a segue quick, Sarah, to the satellites. Because we're talking about these satellites, and one of the popular ones that is happening on WSLP.com are these $100 buy-in satellites. There was one that took place, I think it was last week, and it was $100 buy-in, rebuys, add-ons, all that, and it was supposed to award main event seats, and it ended up getting a prize pool of $22,659. Now, in this satellite, that should be broken down into 2 main event seats, right? $10,000 apiece, and then that extra $2,659 should be awarded to third place. And that's usually how it goes. This particular satellite says, quote, "This is a satellite to the 2020 WSOP main event on December 13th. Winning players will be directly registered to the $10,000 tournament. This is a must-play event." And it was interesting because the client prize pool did not break down in the manner I just discussed. Instead, it said first place, $22,659. It was going to award all the money to first place. And some players, including Eric Baldwin, noticed this. We're tweeting at WSOP, but we're getting no response. And Eric Baldwin ends up winning it. So he wins. He gets the $22,659 to his account, and then gets an email a day or two later from the WSOP saying that there was a mistake, that they're awarding him the $10,000 seat, but the other 12,000 change is getting taken back. They're going to award another $10,000 seat to second place and the extra change to third place. And this was all around very controversial. A lot of people upset that WSOP wasn't more responsive, wasn't monitoring the tournament. A lot of people upset that they would go in and take money out of a player's account. Eric Baldwin was unhappy, but he eventually had a meeting with WSOP officials where they settled matters privately. Eric Baldwin tweeted on December 2nd, he said, "I had a conversation with representatives from WSOP. The official prize pool distribution was going back to what I said. First and second get a ticket. Third gets the cash. I was offered and accepted additional compensation, which I am more than happy with. Thank you to everyone who is passionate about the health and growth of poker. It is my honest opinion that there are good people at WSOP and at WSOP.com who share that passion." Now, we don't know what the additional compensation is. We just know that Baldwin's happy with the situation. Second got the main event seat. Third got the change. But there are still a lot of people upset because they say, rightfully so, that because it said winner take all, people adjusted their play and their style to that. And so everybody really in the tournament was impacted one way or the other.
I agree with Eric that I do genuinely believe that there are good people at the World Series of Poker. I do genuinely believe that there are good people at World Series of Poker at WSOP.com. With that said, quite frequently, the site is managed quite poorly. I mean, to have nobody there for a couple hours of this tournament, does that mean you have nobody like watching the client? Is your customer service department just completely asleep at certain hours in the night? I mean, this is a pretty drastic error. I heard Lance Bradley, our guy, talk about this on the Fives podcast. What if this was a bigger tournament that had a prize pool of like, I don't know, $148,000 or something, and they accidentally clicked winner take all, and then nobody responded throughout the course of the tournament? That'd be even more of a disaster for them. I'm assuming they paid Baldy out close to the 22.6 or whatever it was. As he said, he is more than happy with his additional compensation. I just think that WSOP.com could use an overhaul of sorts. And I realize they're going to be on a smaller scale because they play to less clients than a PokerStars or a GG or Party, et cetera. But they got to ramp things up a little bit. This is almost an inexcusable mistake, just because like it should have been fixed in the moment. People are going to make mistakes. That's totally fine. That happens. But to not fix it at all, to not just be in there while the tournament is going on, while players are left there, shrugging, like, what do we do here? Do we play for the win? Do we play for top three? I just think it's really, really bad and a bad look for WSOP.com.
Yeah, I disagree. Or I don't disagree. I agree. There should be at least somebody monitoring social media, right? Yeah. At least, especially when it's associated with an online site, so that they can discover these problems and then pass them along and fix them. At PokerNews, we're often doing live updates, and we've had plenty of hiccups over the years, from crashed internets to our systems going down, and we have to have somebody always available. And I don't see why a company like WSOP.com doesn't have that right now. From what I understand, a lot of the WSOP.com is a partnership with 888 Poker. And so a lot of those 888 Poker employees are kind of the ones more responsible for the actual creation and operation of the WSOP.com tournaments. And they're based in Israel. And so maybe there's just that time zone difference. I don't know, but clearly they should be doing something a little bit different, especially when it's during major tournaments. You know, satellites for a WSOP main event are pretty serious. And at the same time, you've got the WSOP online circuit happening right now too. So there kind of should be some people monitoring this. Obviously there isn't, and it leads to some kind of disasters like we've seen here.
It's interesting too, obviously whatever deal they negotiated or worked out, you know, was plenty enough for Eric. And I do think in a lot of situations where major companies make mistakes, they ultimately end up just, you know, eating that mistake more or less. Right. And I think that's probably what happened here, except for the first decision was to just go in and take the money out. And I do think that there's also, from a business perspective, and this is a big part of the issues, right, with why the federal government shut down the poker sites, is that basically you're in a world of banking. When you're holding people's money, you're technically acting as a bank, right? And so I think there's definitely some lines that feel strange also about like depositing and then just undepositing money from someone's account without some sort of, I guess, conversation or something previous to that.
I mean, I disagree in a little bit of a regard, in that to me it's a lot like banks when they might make an error in your checking or something. And we've seen stories about this where Joe Schmo went to deposit a $25 check, but the bank makes an error and put $25,000 in it. And so they go on a shopping spree. Well, they're still responsible for paying back that money. That's not how it works. It's not free money. You know, the bank did make an error, yes, but they're entitled to recoup that. And I think it kind of applies to online poker as well. It sucks. It's irresponsible. It's a bad look for sure, but they are entitled to it. And I think just in general, people like to root for the underdog and against the big corporation, right? If we see a bank make a mistake, part of us wants to be like, yeah, they should have to pay, you know, let the person keep that $25,000 and go nuts. But that's not the way it works.
Dude, I saw something the other day where an ATM in Houston was just, money was just coming out of it. And then there was like video and they were arresting people who were taking the money. I was like, dude, that is free money. Like if it comes out of the ATM, that is free money for anyone to get. Like, I don't know. I guess the rules, of course, are, like you said, not designed to take care of the little guys. That's for sure. Who makes the rules? Not the little guy. But I'm glad that Eric got it figured out. And at least we know that's one face we will know in the WSOP.com portion of the main event. And while we're talking about the WSOP.com.
Hey man, what are you doing?
Playing WSOP.
What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Excited about WSOP? Go all in. Download the official WSOP app for free. WSOP. Respect the game. Play for free now.
Now, earlier in the show, we were talking a little bit, you know, about the sexy days of poker, about the time when poker was kind of gangster and old school, when players stayed up all night, maybe like did a rail every now and then while they like, you know, spent their $20,000 and then lost it all in the next day. Of course, I'm talking about the man, the myth, the legend that is Stu Unger, who everyone I think knows is like my favorite of all time. Chad, you had the opportunity to speak to Stu Unger's daughter on more than one occasion, I think actually now. So I'm like super jealous of you. Tell us what we can expect.
I was very excited to get her on the podcast. She's been very active on social media, sharing stories and photos about her father. She had been quiet, if you will, for many years, not really playing an active role in the poker world. She's not a poker player. She doesn't know the game. We talked a little bit about that and why in the actual interview, but she stepped up because now she wants to honor her father's legacy, to maybe share some new information, to share more stories. And so that's what she's been doing on primarily Instagram. And so I reached out and said, why don't you come on the PokerNews podcast? We can talk about it a bit more. We'll talk about you. We'll talk about your father. And I think it was a lot of fun. There was some great information that was revealed. And I say it to her, and I'll say it now. I'm really appreciative that she took the opportunity to talk with us. And it was a real honor because, as you said, Stu Unger looms so large in the poker world and poker history. And I just feel like he's always been there. It just hasn't been active, if you will. So now her participating in the way that she is in the poker world, it's very much active again. People are talking, and it's just very exciting. All right, I am with our guest this week. Very excited to talk to her. One, Stefanie Unger-Campbell, the daughter of a legendary poker player, Poker Hall of Famer, 3-time World Series of Poker main event winner, Stu Unger. Stefanie, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to chat with PokerNews.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's something I've been looking forward to. You've been very active on social media recently, where you've been sharing photos and stories about your father, which is really what led us here. I was following those. I did an article for PokerNews. So I guess let me ask this question right off the bat: is what inspired you to kind of open up on social media and kind of share these stories with the larger poker world?
From time to time, I'll Google just certain stories and just my dad's name in a weird way. Just reading over stuff like memories and things like that is somewhat even therapeutic for me at times, And, but I've noticed throughout the years, there are some things that aren't fully accurate, or maybe just he's known more at the poker table rather than the man who I knew, who I find to be so amazing in so many ways, honestly. And I just felt he's such a looked up person, he's like a legend in the poker world. And I was I just feel I want his fans and just for people to know more about the man that I knew away from the poker table, because you always hear he's generous, or he was this, or he was that, and I just want to add more of the behind the scenes of who I knew him to be,
Right.
So.
And on the flip side of that, the poker world really only knew you previously from the 1997 World Series of Poker main event broadcast. After your dad had won, he did an interview with Gabe Kaplan. And I remember this, the videos on YouTube where, he held up a picture of you. I think you were 14 at the time. And, said that he loves you and that he would be seeing you soon. And, that right there, showed a lot what you meant to him. But, you were immortalized, if you will, in the poker world from that one little moment. Do you remember watching that moment on TV and seeing that?
Yeah, I do actually. I knew that he did that because he was calling me in between, first of all, during that tournament, he was calling me in between hands. And then at the end, after he was done and he won, he told me, he goes, I showed your picture. He goes, so you'll see it on TV. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have my picture. And anyways, that's how I found out he had my picture in his pocket the whole time. And then when I saw it, I just thought it was really sweet, really amazing. And so I still watch it sometimes from every time to time, maybe ever so often. And just hearing his voice and things like that I miss. So I will kind of hold on to, those kind of things and periodically watch them. So
sure. And prior to 1997, when you were 14, what was your relationship like, with your dad when you were a little bit younger? If I'm not mistaken, you and your mother had kind of moved away while he was on the poker grind. Can you just maybe share a little bit about that aspect of his life?
Sure. Yeah. So my mom and I moved to Florida when I was about 6. And so what I used to do is I used to always spend all my Christmas vacations with him, Easter vacation, anytime that I was not in school. I spent the entire summers, all 3 months. So I'd fly out to Vegas, and just as much time as I could, I would have with him. And then in between that, he would actually fly out to Florida to come visit me for my birthday and things like that. So that was kind of, I'd say, what my childhood was like until he won the 3rd World Series. And he was like, I want you out here. Just talk to my mom, was like, whatever we got to do to get you guys to move back here. I want to be close to my daughter. And so literally we came out here right after he won the World Series. He told us that. We went back home and packed and just came right back, like within weeks. So yeah. So I actually got to spend the last 2 years of his life with him, which obviously I didn't know that was going to be the last 2 years.
Sure.
So it was like a real blessing, you know, that I got those last 2 years, because we spent quite a bit of time together. So
what was the relationship like with Stewie and your mom? You know, after they had obviously separated, were they friendly? Was there any animosity?
No, they're both characters. I'll tell you that. I was raised around some just some funny stuff, but it's weird because I feel like they were each other's like soulmate, you know, like neither of them ever really went on to meet anybody that was quite like what they had. But unfortunately, I think that just drugs and women and groupies and all that just really got in the way, unfortunately, of trying to have a real marriage. And it just didn't last. Like they were together on and off for 10 years before getting married, and then came to Vegas, and it only really lasted 4 years after that, and then it was over with. So that's why I mean, like the character, like you could always tell they loved each other, like always, but it just wasn't going to work for a marriage, you know?
Right.
So, yeah.
You had mentioned that, you know, you guys came out to Vegas, you got to spend the last 2 years before he passed, you know, there with Vegas. And, you know, when he did pass away in 1998, you know, obviously it was a very tough time for you.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and, you know, that kind of period and kind of that mourning process, if you will?
Yeah, that was really hard for me. See, my dad, for me, he wasn't only just my dad, he was like my best friend. So for me, it felt like a double loss because I used to talk to him every day. And I mean, like, sometimes for like hours, you know, we would just talk. Like he literally was my best friend. So when he passed, I literally couldn't even cry. Like it was so painful. I don't even think that I was able to tap into it. I like stayed strong, and I just was trying to make it through. And it took me about 2 years to fully finally let out like a deep like cry, like of like just grieving, because I think I just kicked into survival mode and just tried to make it through. So that was like the hardest thing to go through. I was 16 at the time, you know, so it was just, yeah, it just was hard. Yeah.
I certainly can only imagine. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself today? I know you're living in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I know you've got some children. Can you give the listeners an update?
Yeah, so I'm in Vegas. I'm currently a producer, so I have, you know, I'm into that. I have 2 kids. I've been married 10 years. My daughter reminds me a lot of my dad. She has this memory that's crazy, out of this world, and very, very sharp, very witty, which is so much like my dad. But my dad said I was like him to a T, so I just feel like maybe she's like me. I don't know. So it all goes together. So anyways, and then I have a son, and when he was born, everybody said he looked just like my dad. So yeah, I love being in Vegas. Vegas is my home for sure. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am at this time.
I think it kind of begs the question, if your dad was still around and now that you have children, do you think he would make a great grandfather?
Oh my gosh, yes. I always tell them that. I'm like, I wish so badly that my dad, their grandfather, could have met them. They would have had him wrapped around their finger like I used to. So I could only imagine what it would be like as a grandfather, you know? So
sure.
He would have spoiled them for sure. So
I know I was looking through your Instagram timeline and I seen a picture of you and your mom, and you were counting the time that you guys got to do the shuffle up and deal at the World Series of Poker main event.
Yes.
What was that like? I think it was like, what, 2008, 2009?
Yeah, it had to have been. I don't know if anybody listening was there at that time, but yeah, they had asked me, they said, hey, since you're here, and I think we were there promoting my dad's book. I mean, we would go every year because it's like family. Like you run into it's a big family reunion. You run into like all these people. So we would go every year. And so they were like, Stefanie, would you like to do the shuffle up and deal? And not really knowing much about poker, I was like, okay, sure. Like, come to find out, like, that's like a big thing, a big honor. And I recognize it now, but yeah, it was cool. Like I stood up on a chair in the middle of the floor. They announced, you know, Stu Unger's daughter's here to do, you know, all that. And so everybody was excited, and then I just wished everyone good luck and shuffle up and deal, and then that was it. But it was fun. It was a good time.
Now, I know a lot of listeners, I know the answer to this before I ask, but I know a lot of listeners probably don't. Do you play poker yourself?
You know what? I'm so glad you asked that, because the last article that I believe you wrote, which was the one you were referring to in the beginning of our conversation, you had, you know, replied, wrote about one of my answers that I had put on Instagram, where fans, I allowed them to ask me anything they wanted on the anniversary of my father's death. And so I kind of celebrated in that way of just remembering him. And one of the questions, like, I always get asked is, do you play poker? And I said, no. And I said, my father never wanted me to learn. And the funny thing is, I was sent just a few days ago a podcast of somebody talking about your article, and they were the two guys in the on the poker podcast were saying, why doesn't she play poker? I don't understand it. Like, wouldn't you be curious to know if you have that same gift as you know, as her father, and this and that? And so I was hoping you'd ask me this, because it's not that I don't want to learn how to play poker or I'm unmotivated in any way. Like, I actually respect the game a lot. But what I should share on, which I never do, is that my dad, the last few weeks before he passed away, one of our last conversations, he had told me, I never want you to play. Like, I just don't want you around that atmosphere, the way the guys talk at the table. I just don't feel like I would ever want you around that. And so for me, that was kind of like this last thing I could do to respect and honor him. So I just never really learned how to play, just because that was one of our last conversations. So that's really the real reason. And I think that story is not fully told. So I wanted to make sure to tell you today that that's really the reason why I just did it out of honor and respect, really. So.
Sure.
Yeah,
well, it certainly makes sense, and I think you're doing a great job. As well, you might not be a poker player, you are now an ambassador of sorts by sharing you know, these memories and stories about your dad. As kind of a poker historian, let's talk real quick about the book you had just mentioned. You said you were at the WSOP, you know, kind of doing a little promotion of the book, The One of a Kind by Nolan Dalla and Peter Olson. A great poker book, absolutely a classic. I would recommend to anybody. They kind of did a movie based off that book that I know you weren't a big fan of. And in fact, you're kind of motivated to want to do maybe a different movie about the life of your father. So I thought maybe we'd talk about all that here real quick.
Yeah, so they actually approached us, I believe. I don't know if it was before the book came out, but they had the script, I believe, beforehand. And we read it, and I was just like, I just was like, no, this isn't really my dad. Like, you know, and so we declined, like, being a part, which is fine. I mean, when you're a public figure, anybody could write whatever really that they want, you know, so, or do whatever they want, you know. So they did. And when we were at that book signing, actually, so many fans came up to us asking, they were like, did you have anything to do with that movie? And we were like, no. And they were like, well, anyone that's a fan of Stewie's knew that wasn't very accurate. And I was like, I don't know. I've never seen it. Like, I just know that I read a few pages of the script, and it just wasn't what I, you know, thought was, you know, accurate of my dad. So I never saw it. I didn't want to see it anyways. I feel like it would have, you know, kind of got me down or upset. I don't know, you know, so, but yeah, that book, his book has been bought as options in the past to be made into a movie. One guy by the name of Graham King, he is a huge Hollywood producer. He bought the option, but never followed through with it. So we've never actually got, in my opinion, a real, true, accurate story of my dad's life being told, which is why I really want to do it now that I'm in the producing world, and I want to just show the man behind the genius, the man that made him who he is, the 3-time world champion that he is. And I just want to show that side, as well as all the poker accomplishments and all that. So.
Well, I think, he certainly lived a very interesting life and would make for a great movie, or possibly like a TV show. We've seen on Netflix the Queen's Gambit about chess,
yes,
which, very popular. And a lot of people were saying they should do something similar with, the poker world. And you're something about your father in that regard could certainly be a big hit.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that. I actually did develop something that has to do with telling about the underground world of poker. I actually, about 7 months ago, developed something of accumulating. I have all these stories, and I would love to be a part of doing something like a Netflix series. But I haven't approached the right people yet to be able, but I do have something developed, and I do have it submitted to be copywritten and all that, like, of my idea, Sure. What I mean? I'm sure it could be told in a million different ways. So, but yes, I absolutely agree with you. I think these guys were amazing. They were characters, but they were geniuses. You got the Chip Reeses, who stopped on his way to law school and like never really left. And he was amazing. Like, there's just so many stories that I feel like could be told, and with that behind the scenes, and then just how amazing they really are as people as well. So
sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as a poker fan and kind of a poker historian. Your dad won a lot of titles throughout his career. We mentioned the 1997 main event championship, for which he won a bracelet. He won back-to-back years in the late 1970s. Where are all those mementos, those trophies, the bracelets? Do you know where they're at?
Honestly, I don't have a lot of things left over from my dad's memorabilia. He went through a really hard time right before he won his 3rd World Series of Poker, and just lost everything, unfortunately. And so when he did, it all just like went wherever it went. And so that is one thing I wish I did have, some of those things, Sure. Like home movies and certain things like that as well. Like, it just was really kind of sad at the end. So when he won his 3rd World Series of Poker, after all that happened, I just feel like it gave him this confidence and this life back. Like, no, this is really who I am. Like, I'm able to overcome all this that I just went through, and then to come back and win a 3rd time and break this record. But it just so happens, he ended up passing away about a year later of heart failure. So he never really fully got to see what would continue on. But I'm just glad that he got to experience that, at least, right before his passing. So
I know there are a lot of poker fans out there that often wonder, if your dad was still around when the poker boom happened, just what sort of influence he would have on the game then, and his stardom would have skyrocketed even more. He would have been certainly one of the superstars of poker in the modern age.
Yeah, I agree. I actually used to be in, like, how everybody is, like, when you're in a restaurant or wherever you're at and you see it up on the screen, the different tournaments going on. And before, I used to be like, oh, I can't even watch this, because I know my dad was around. He would have been totally all involved in this. So for me as a daughter, it was always like, what could he have turned into? So there was a little bit of that, like grieving of like, he would have loved this, So, but now I'm fine. Years later, I've worked through my healing and all that. And yes, I still miss him, but I understand that, it's an amazing game. And I love that it has taken on this whole other world of just becoming so popular. It wasn't before. Actually, my dad's was the first year the 97 World Series was the first year it was ever even televised. So then from there, it like took off into this like boom, which I think is really amazing that there's such an interest.
Right. Well, he certainly looms large in poker hearts and the poker history. I know you're going to be continuing to share stories and answering questions. If poker fans want to follow along or possibly get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that on what social media and whatnot?
Right now, I've just been communicating with mostly everybody through my Instagram account. I may explore getting other avenues of contact, but that one I actually check every single message myself. So you could reach out to me on Stefanie Unger on my Instagram page. And I check every single one of the messages. I love responding and talking with fans and engaging. I love the poker community. So it's been really great these last few weeks. So.
Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to chat with us at PokerNews and sharing stories about your dad. It's been a real treat.
Thank you so much, Chad. I appreciate it.
Well, I, for one, am hoping that we can do some more collabs with Stefanie and get more stories. I think, we used to have a really popular series called Ivy Stories. I just did that interview with Dewey Tomko last year, which did really, really well. I think there is this mystique about certain people and certain, times in poker that poker people are just always going to love, and that maybe she could elucidate not only some of the characters that wouldn't want to talk to us, but would want to talk to her, but some stories from her own life. And I think, you guys, this has gone on way longer than I thought it would already. Like, this is just what happens. But I think we have to talk about a couple of important issues. Number one, what's going on with Doug and Daniel? Jeff?
Doug Polk has had a good last couple of weeks, to say the least, or maybe it's just this week where he's really, as he would call it, backed up the truck. As he would also call it, he's been running really well, and he's admitted that on Twitter. You guys know that I'm biased towards the Negreanu side of things, and I think that Negreanu is playing really well. I think Doug Polk is playing really well as well, and I think they both would say those nice things about each other. So as far as the numbers are concerned, we're taping this on Wednesday morning, and Doug Polk is up about $674,000. They played almost 8,000 hands. Remember, when they get to 12,500 hands, the losing player can opt out of this high stakes feud. I do not see that happening. I think they'll go the whole 25,000 hands, which means they're about 35% of the way done with this one. So they're playing today, Wednesday, Thursday. They're playing Friday as well. It's on ggpoker.tv. I'll be doing the commentary. Don't mean to brag, guys. And it should be a lot of fun. So please join us and go Daniel. But Doug's playing well.
Go Daniel, but also Doug's cool too. Okay, cool. Yeah. And in other challenges that we've been keeping track of now for a while, we have the Galfond challenge. And I think I mentioned last week, I reached out to Chance. He does want to come on the show, but he would like to wait until January or February. So I pumped the brakes on that. Phil Galfond is also very busy at the moment. Apparently when people do these challenges, it's just all consuming, and that's all they can think about or do. Chad, do you know what's going on? Should we just defer to Jeff? What do you think?
No, I do know this one. So the Galfond challenge, Chance Kornuth and Phil Galfond recently completed their 35th session. And during that time, Chance Kornuth won $23,000. So he is up $59,500 through a little over 18,000 hands played. So through about halfway through the challenge, he's up 3 buy-ins. And now the lead has been kind of going back and forth here recently, and they've kind of been small leads, if you will. Somebody will win 60,000 one day, they'll take the lead and then lose it back. And it's kind of like that at the moment. Nobody's really pulled away, or as Jeff said, like Polk has done, is backed up the truck. And it'll be interesting. This one should, the way they're playing very tough. And I don't know, we still got half the challenge left to go. There's 35,000 hands, but this could be one of those sort of ones like the Veni Vidi one that they first had earlier in the year that comes down to the wire, which is pretty exciting. But again, a long way to go. 100, 200 PLO. Remember that side bet is Chance Kornuth's 250,000 to Phil Galfond's 1 million, 4-1 on this. And I know it's pretty exciting. I'm starting to get excited about it again now that they're playing pretty frequently. They're actually going to be playing later today. So come next week's episode, we'll have yet another update on it.
Yeah, that shows what I know, because I was like, hey, we usually shoot the podcast on like Tuesday or Wednesday if you'd want to come on. And he's like, yeah, well, those are the days I do the challenge. So no. And I was like, cool. All right. Thanks. So way to go, Sarah. But yeah, it is getting exciting. And we have a exciting couple of weeks, shockingly, coming up for us in poker. I'm going to go hang out with Jeff and Chad in the City of Sin. We're going to crown a World Series of Poker main event champion. We've got, also this Bilzerian challenge. So I guess I didn't know the full deets on that either, but essentially the satellite winner from the 100K Dan Bilzerian challenge now is going to play Dan Bilzerian heads up. Did you guys hear this? So she's going to be training. She's going to get her, poker game straight and get some coaching and play Bilzerian. I'm sure he's coaching and studying, getting a coach and studying really hard also. And I think, we're looking towards 2021. I feel like we've got a lot of exciting action. What are the chances, you guys, 2021, are we going to have live poker?
Yes. And I think we will have a real World Series of Poker. I just think it might be a little later in the calendar year than is the norm.
That's perfect for me.
I'll take it.
All right. Chad, what do you think?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of good news coming out about vaccines. I'm hearing if that momentum carries on over the next few months, fingers crossed it gets 2021 a little bit more back to normal. And I would be ecstatic if there is a traditional World Series of Poker come next summer.
Amen. All right, boys. Well, that is it for us this week. I will be gone next week. I hope you miss me terribly. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas, Happy Chanukah, all the good holidays, whatever you celebrate. If you don't celebrate a holiday, I hope you get to see your family and have a cocktail, eat some good food. That's what I'm going to be doing. Deuces.
The key to winning big is using every little bit of knowledge to your advantage. At Oddschecker, we give you the edge. Better odds, better picks, and better offers to make you a better bettor. Why settle for less? Quickly compare the odds at every sportsbook to ensure that you're getting the best price to maximize your return. Visit us at www.oddschecker.com/US. Oddschecker. Sports betting smarter.